Great, thank you, Patrick. And I think we have a new Youth-Nex t-shirt, Got Perturbance? I'm not sure perturbance is a word, but I think we can coin it. So we are just about out of time, but I don't want to cut off any questions or comments from the audience. So does anyone have any questions, comments, final thoughts you'd like to leave us with? Or you'd like other people in the room to start thinking about? Wait for the mic, yeah.
Stanley Pollock, Teen Empowerment, and there was a whole bunch of stuff I didn't understand that was just said over the last hour or so. So I feel like I better sign up for a course here or something. I guess one question, in terms of the research, what I see is not a very high degree of diligence or connection between the reality of this research world and the reality that I live in, which is the day-to-day implementation of programs. So particularly on the level, the mayors of, Boston, if you went back and you took a look at what happened in Boston over the last 10 years, you just find that, there's just no diligence, related to the data that's actually happening. And what I'm interested in is how do you take the information, the expertise that you all have, and take it out of just in this research world and put it into the day-to-day world, get that kind of diligence to happen on a political level, on a level which will actually matter in the lives of young people.
I don't, so I'm trying to think about what question I should answer. I think something along the line of how do we take the techniques and the capabilities that we have and apply it to what you call the real world. And I say that not to be disrespectful, because real world is that's another one of those things that, well, this is a real world, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. So I guess if you're saying maybe, and I mean this to only to find a common language, so if what you're trying to talk about is go ahead. Right.
Because actually what happened in Chicago, I have theory about it in Chicago, and I'd love to talk to you, but I have no standing. You have standing to do that. Right. How do you use your standing to take your analysis and have it actually have a physical impact on policy?
Yeah, so we could go, Chicago, we could have a very long personal conversation about that, but I'll tell you the short version of it, which is we've had that conversation over the last 20 years. We continue to have that conversation. What mayors do and what people do is informed by research, but it's not driven by research, if that's what you're talking about. Now, how does that research reach them? Here's what I would say. It's an important question. The question is who's in the room when you're having a conversation you've had for 30 years or 20 years repeatedly. I think that might be a place where either from an advocacy point or a program point of view and as a researcher you're talking about. So literally in Chicago, the mayors convene a group where we're at the table talking to them about what our research says and how we think it can make a difference and what they should do. We're one of 15 voices, 20 voices, and not everybody, and researchers tend to speak with modesty about what they've done, and so sometimes it doesn't carry the day. So I think that's a different question than I thought you were asking, so I'm glad you clarified.
Patrick's been trying to do it. I've been trying to do it. Dale's been trying to. We're all applied developmental scientists. It's what we're hoping to be able to do. But Patrick said it very well. Mayors or other decision makers are informed by research, but they don't determine their behavior by research. Moreover, I would add, quite cynically, that they're only informed by research that they're predisposed to believe. And I think We've seen that, unfortunately, at the federal level as well as at state and municipal levels. So in my very first book, I wrote, my concluding section was The Scientist, the Citizen. I was very young when I wrote that, but there's still some elements of truth to it. I got into a big debate in Germany in June with Greg Duncan about this. We need to advocate as well as be good developmental scientists. That is a very risky statement for me to make because many of my colleagues would say as soon as I start advocating, I lose my credibility as an objective scientist. I don't think that's the case, but someone as concerned about poverty issues in the United States as Greg Duncan believes it is the case. So I think we need to somehow walk a fine line between being rigorous scientists and being citizen advocates for the points of view that would lead us to be able to say, here is what happens when you don't treat kids correctly, and therefore here are the actions you should take, and you'll be held accountable if you don't in the ballot box, and I'm going to work to raise money against you, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to begin being active citizens as well as being active scientists. Many of my colleagues, I'd be interested in what people around the table as well as in the audience would say, that if you take the stance that I'm willing to take, because after all, my career is virtually over. I mean, look at my age. What can happen now? I can do that with no cost, but especially for younger people, it is a risk to become advocates. But unless we do that, then they'll continue to be informed by only those findings that they find convenient to be informed by.
I would guess I'd say something similar. 2 points. One is that the research on frames and how people think about things does suggest that frames eat data. So if your frame and how you think about the problem is inconsistent with the data, you believe your frame and not the data. And so we've got to change the frames people use, not just the data we provide them. And that means you've got to work and understand. And one of the things they're learning from that frameworks kind of work is that advocates are often the worst framers. Because what is obvious to an advocate is the issue for the critic. So if you believe family poverty is a crime to kids as an advocate for dealing with it, you're coming from the wrong perspective, because critics think that poverty is the parents' fault and they deserve what they're getting at some extreme level. And so your data is not going to be the thing that's going to make the difference there. So you got to think about it that way. The other thing is, I think, I'm not sure it's advocacy in the way you were talking about it, but I do think it's advocacy in the sense of being present in the community, being imaged. I was told recently that she was surprised how much I had an effect on different things, the way people thought. And she said the reason it was is because you're at all those meetings. You know, it's not that I come in with my findings, but I'm listening to what's going on. I'm there asking the same questions. I'm on the mayor's violence prevention committee, not because I'm an expert in violence prevention, and I have the research study that they should use, but because I believe there's things we do know that can make a difference, and connecting what we know to what we do is the real challenge of science. Yuri Bronfenbrenner once said that the application of science is the cutting edge of science. And we have too many people who believe science ought to be, you know, away from that edge rather than on that edge.
One other thing before. So, show of hands, how many of you believe that global climate change is occurring now? Okay. How many of you believe that human actions, now it doesn't mean that it hasn't happened before, that it's not cyclical, that it's happening now. Okay. How many of you believe that human actions are involved in that change? Okay. So almost everybody in the room puts their hands up. So Patrick made a very important point. I just want to emphasize it. you go into the room with the mayor, you're one of 15 voices. Now, we believe as scientists that we have the truth on our side because we've done the most rigorous research, and people should listen to us more. But why aren't they listening to all these people who believe in global climate change, and the fact that 99% of all scientists who've looked at it believe that we're in a period of global climate change and it's facilitated by humans? It's because there's a larger value in those meetings. As scientists, we really appreciate your opinion or your statement, but that's just your opinion. We now have to hear from this interest group and that interest group. And my job as mayor is to balance all the opinions in my constituency. And science has no more of a leg up than anyone else. And it's sort of what Dale was saying as well. So that's another issue. That's a systems issue that's based on American values of everybody has a right to their opinion. So until someone says scientists' opinion is different, I mean, one of the political parties at the last round of presidential elections, 11 out of the 12 candidates for president in that political party did not put their hand up when asked, do you believe that evolution is a scientific fact? They were able to say no because that's just an opinion. It's a theory, and they think theory is just opinion. I'm sorry, but that's... Sandy? Oh, well, I shouldn't call on people, but Sandy had her hand up.
Oh, I was just going to say, to help with my work, because as faculty we have different demands, and some universities don't value, applied work and this and that. But I think what Janet mentioned with the intermediaries, I think that can really, and we haven't talked a lot about that, but that can go a long way. That I think, I've worked with the Arizona Center for After School Excellence as a way to get my work on diversity in programs out. And they've changed their criteria for quality program in the state of Arizona. And so that way, if I talk to them, and then they go off and they're talking to all the programs in the state of Arizona. And so I think the intermediaries is real important. I also think that professors and researchers need to learn how to communicate their ideas to people. And also that the conversation should go both ways. So I think a lot of our talking right now is how do we help disseminate some of this information down to programs, but I've learned a lot by talking with program leaders, with kids, with the people at AZ Case on what kind of things what issues are pressing, or how to make sense of contradictory findings, things of that nature. So I'd like to see it go both ways.
I would just add, I recently made now I work a lot in the school literature, a strategic decision to write my book with teachers. It gave me more legitimacy. The teachers actually have a story, and we can have complementary stories. So we have to communicate better and share our language and show the different sides of it. And I don't think we do enough of it. It's a language problem. It's a partnership problem. And, so I think we can do a lot more of that in out of school, is really doing that partnership.
Quick note, there are still a few more hands. We are officially out of time and over time, so if you need to run, please do so. That's fine. There are a few, I've seen a few enthusiastic hands, so we'll continue for those of us who can to take a few more comments.
Someone else waiting. She has one.
Yes, Sarah, go ahead. Sorry.
Perturbed, and so I've had a perturbance for the last maybe 20 years that I'd love to hear your response to. What I feel like is really good science takes a lot of time, and it's very slow, but the questions that we're asking are always changing, and the world is changing very fast. And I always sense this level of asynchrony between the work that I'm doing and what is needed, and it's always a chase to stay relevant. And I'm just curious about your thoughts on that issue.
Well, I'm with you. That is an issue. There is there's a saying, it takes 15 years for discovery to move into practice in healthcare. So that it's not just us. And part of that is it is hard to move along, and also how to the extent to which funding. What can we do? I think we can do a couple of things. I think, for example, the partnership that Bart was speaking from, that's a critical opportunity and a model for us. That an organization partners with researchers in an ongoing way. And it creates financial interdependency as well as career interdependency. I think that's an answer. So the questions start to become more relevant. I think the second is that because I'm right, that science is mostly about being wrong and getting less wrong, that there's an opportunity there to continue to be in a conversation and move along and be a part of be relevant because of that. And I think that's a great opportunity. And then I would make one other suggestion. I made this passing reference to audacious research. And I think we should be, as scientists and as practitioners and policymakers and as funders, to be trying to think about a fewer, maybe less distribution of funds broadly, but maybe some more audacious kinds of research evaluation kinds of activities. And that requires refining the questions, quickly getting the consensus about constructs, what we think is important to measure and to look at. And then third, to come up with some collaborative plans. So that I hope everybody in here is thinking, well, wait, that's not how academia works. That's not how funding world works. That's the point. That's why I call it audacious.
I want to just piggyback on two things. One, the comment about intermediaries. I do think that our field is going to advance most rapidly the more strongly we work with intermediaries, both to support practice and support research, getting into practice and being done in practice-relevant ways. I just think that
that could be a good action step.
Yeah, doing it just in isolation by program by program by program, yeah. we're never going to catch up. And the point you were just making, Patrick, about thinking larger and I think we've got to think about being driven by research questions more than evaluation questions. And what I mean by that specifically is we need to know what are the factors that are working, not whether this package of factors works. We tend to want to package it up to study it, and that's partly because of the wanting to be able to prove it works. It's probably because of the competitive nature of the funding we have. I think we need to do more studies that begin to understand the factors that are affecting what works, so that when you're in those meetings and you are asked those questions, your answer isn't about this one study that showed one program work, but rather when you look at the research that says what works across these things, and it's been studied in the larger, bigger kind of ways in which you're talking about, you have stronger answers to provide. We're never going to adequately evaluate the programs in our field. It is an impossible task given the diversity of our programs, the funding of our programs. We're never going to be able to out-evaluate the questions we need. We need to think about the questions more broadly, more clearly, with more consistency, and invest in them more focused ways.
On that note, I think we need to wrap up. So, but I want to special thank you to the wrap-up panel for providing some closing and thought to this. A big thank you to everyone who's been here over the past few days. This has been an amazing experience. This has been particularly special to me. I think this was really a gift to me to get to invite a group of people who include my own mentors, people whose work I really admire in the field, peers and mentors alike, and programs that I've seen and gotten to interact with who impress and inspire me, and to bring you all to one place has been just a true gift to me. So I want to thank you for energizing me and my work, as well as hopefully all of you. Two quick notes. We are going to be doing a special issue of the of advances in child and family policy and practice. I might have just butchered the title a little bit there, but that'll be coming out not for a while, but it will be based on the conference. So keep an eye open for that. And if you're on a panel, you'll be getting an email follow-up on that soon. We also do produce publications out of the conference, and there'll be an ebook following probably in about a year. That'll be based on the presentations here, and we'll send out links to that, as well as I mentioned before, links to the video for this. So there are some snacks on the back table which you can grab on your way out. Thank you again for your participation in this, and I hope you keep the conversation going as we leave here. Thank you.